they don't do them well, then they're not happy. So I think some of the commandments. Welcome to another exciting biblical story. At that time, King Xerxes was the ruler over Persia, but also over the whole empire, over many, many countries of the world. And he was very, very famous and a very rich king. And he made big festivals in his palace. And he invited many people, and he was just having fun with them, and he was very generous to the people. And in the festivals they were drinking a lot of wine, and on the seventh day he was very joyful, and he said to his servants, "Please bring me the Queen Vashti. Ask her to come to me. Ask her to come to me. I want to present her to my guests." So a servant went to the Queen Vashti, but she also had a festival in the palace, perhaps for women. And you know what she did? She didn't obey the king. She just refused to come. So the king was very, very angry, and he asked his advisors what to do. And they said, "If you don't punish Queen Vashti, then all the women in the countries around will not obey their husbands anymore. So we recommend you to set her aside and that she will not come to you anymore." And the king did that. So she was separated from the king for her whole life. And the news spread around the countries. But then the servant said, "We can find you a beautiful other woman. We will search in all the countries." So they were searching for many, many, many girls. And they were sent to the king, and they had oil baths, and they were prepared for the king. And the king then said yes or no. And he said no. But one day a very, very pretty girl came, and her name was Esther. And as soon as he saw her, he fell in love with her. And she was so nice. But she was an orphan girl. Her uncle Mordecai was taking care of her. And the uncle Mordecai, he also worked in the palace of King Xerxes. And he said to her, "Esther, don't tell the king that you are Jewish. It might be a danger for you." And Mordecai one day saw and heard, when he was in duty, that two men who were working in the palace tried to make a plot against the king Xerxes to kill him. And Mordecai told the king about that plot. And so the king, his life was spared because Mordecai warned him. But he forgot all about it. And during that time, a man was very powerful in the palace. His name was Haman. But you know what? This Haman, he hated the Jews. He hated the Jewish people. And, he wanted to get a lot of honor from people. So he asked the king that he gets a lot of power and that the people would bow down before him. But you know who didn't do it? Mordecai didn't do it, and he got very furious, and he tried to kill Mordecai. So the people told him to build up a scaffold for Mordecai. And one day He even went to the king and said, you know, there are some people, they won't worship you. They only worship the living God. Why don't you send a letter to all the countries of the world that on that day we are able to kill them, you know, and they have a lot of money and I give you a lot of money and then we can kill them. What do you say, King Xerxes? And King Xerxes agreed, and he wrote to all the countries of the world, on such and such a day, all the Jews were allowed to be killed. And you know what? Mordecai heard it, and he was so sad. So he put ashes on his head, and he was crying outside of the palace. And Queen Esther saw it, and why is he behaving so strange? And she asked her servants to go out and ask Mordecai why he was so sad. And he spoke then to the queen and said, you know, we Jews will be killed and you as well. Haman influenced the king to write a letter that on that day we will be killed. And if you don't do anything, you also will be killed. Go to the king. But she said, you know, if I go to the king, then I will die, because you're not allowed to go to the king if you're not invited. But I want to help you. I will fast 3 days and nights. And Mordecai told all the Jewish people to fast also. I will go to the king, and if I die, I die. And if I'm not dying, I can help you, but only when God helps me. The king hasn't been asking for me a whole month, but I fast and pray and ask God that I have wisdom to talk to the king right. And on the 3rd day, she went in. And you know what? The king showed his scepter and he said, come in, Esther. What is your desire? Oh, my king, thank you that I can speak to you, my king. May I invite you for a dinner? Yes, of course, I come to your dinner. So she had a dinner, and she invited also Haman to that dinner. And then the king got a deep love that night again for Queen Esther and said, oh, Esther, I'll give you everything. Just ask me, do you have another desire? Yes, I would like to have another meal with you. May I invite you another time? Yes, of course. And invite Haman as well. So she invited Haman as well. And just before that time, for the second invitation, the King Xerxes was reading about the history and about what happened in the palace, and he was reading that Mordecai rescued his life, and he was calling Haman and said, what would you do to a person who did a very, very good thing to you? How would you honor him? Yeah, I would bring chariots and I just would announce him that he is a wonderful man and that he has done, and just go through the whole city and honor him in front of all the people. So the king said, bring Mordecai to me, clothe him like you said in a beautiful robe, and take him out with chariots through Susa, and let there be announced that Mordecai is a wonderful man and that he has saved the life of the King Xerxes and that he is highly honored. So Haman was getting nervous. No, my enemy is honored now. Something is wrong here. Yeah, God, he knew God was in charge. He didn't know that God was in charge of his evil plans. And God always helps us, sometimes in the last second. And he also sees if people who do evil try to destroy us or hurt us or rob us or do bad things to us, God can prevent the evil plans against our lives. And he can protect us in a mighty way. Just trust in him. God did the same for his people. So on the second festival, Mordecai was also invited. And Queen Esther told King Xerxes that she is also Jewish and that her own people will be killed on that day. And the king was so sad, but he said, what I have said, but I write another letter to all the nations that all the Jews in all the countries on that day can defeat themselves and take whatever the enemies do to them. They can defend and they go into battle and fight their enemies. So he wrote that and he sealed it. And you know what? On that day, the Jewish people took revenge of their enemies. And they were so happy. And that's how they survived this attack. And God loves his people. And Queen Esther was such a wise queen. And she rescued her people. She trusted in God. And she loved God. And she was so wise. And she was submissive to her husband. She obeyed him and honored him. And through her, God could help the whole nation of Israel. So the Jews were very, very happy. They got all their enemies and they even killed many people. And, then they could live in peace in the countries till the time they could come back to their land Israel. And how the story continues, I will tell you in the next program.